This week on At Home with Misty, we're going to be making a favorite out of the Best of Block book. Alright, so this is Best of Block. It features a bunch of our favorite quilts from Block Magazine throughout the years, and there are even some exclusives in here. And so that is one that I'll be teaching you today. It's called Lattice Arrows, and you can see my version hanging behind me. I love this quilt. I think it's absolutely beautiful. I did switch it up a little bit from the pattern in Block. The pattern in Block is designed to work with a layer cake, and I decided to use yardage because I had these beautiful cuts from Karen Nyberg's Earth Views fabric collection. All right, to make this quilt, you need 3/4 of a yard for each of the fabrics you choose for your arrows. These are the ones I selected. You're also going to need 2.5 yards of your accent fabric. This is the blue that kind of makes that sashing around each of our blocks. Then you'll need 1.5 yards for your outer border and 4.5 yards of your white background. All right, so this is the block we're going to be making today, and it's really quite simple. You're going to start by taking your 4 prints that you select to make your arrows out of, and we're going to cut those all into 10-inch squares. Since we're working from yardage, if you have a layer cake, obviously they would already be 10 inches. And I'm just going to go ahead and grab one, and we are going to cut this in half both directions, so that we have 4 5-inch squares. Just make sure I've got it all centered. Just like so. And as you're cutting all of your fabrics, you're going to want to keep the like colors together. So I'll just stack them up like so. And then to start off with, we are actually going to make our little lattice piece. That's the top and bottom of our block here that kind of forms the X's in the quilt behind me. So let's actually use our accent fabric, which is this beautiful teal that I have here. And we're going to cut a 2 3/4 inch strip and subcut that into 2 3/4 inch squares, which you can see I've done here. And then I drew a line diagonally, corner to corner. If you don't want to draw the line, you can skip this step, but it's great if you just need a little extra guidance for your eye. And then I have an 1.5 inch by 4 1/4 inch rectangle, and we're going to take this over to the iron and we're going to press it in half long ways. All right, so I'm just going to make sure this is folded right in half. Press that down. There we go. All right, so then now once I've done that, I can lay this right along that line that I drew. You can see why if you just wanted to set it point to point, you could skip drawing that line. And now we're going to sew a 1/4 inch from the raw edges that we've just folded. So let's take this to the machine. Just make sure this is centered up corner to corner. Have everything straight before I start stitching. There we go. So once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and flip this back, press it with the iron again. There we go. Now on the pattern, it actually just has you top stitch on this side that's open. I like the look of top stitching on both sides, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. But I'll start with this open side. There's one. I just think it looks really nice when both sides are stitched. So this is just decorative. Just like so. And now we can bring this back over here and square our block back up. Remember, these are 2 3/4. So I really just like to use the corner of my ruler here, since we're not changing the fabric that this was sewed to. We just need to cut off that little bit of excess in the corner. And then do this other side. Here we go. Just like so. And so you're going to need 2 of these for each of your blocks. You can see there's one at the top and the bottom. So let's go ahead and move on to the next step. All right, now we're ready to move on to our half square triangles. So in order to do that, we are going to pick our accent fabric and our background, and we're gonna have 5-inch squares. We'll place those right sides together, and we're gonna sew all the way around on all 4 sides, a 1/4 inch in. And if you want to, you can go ahead and do whatever color you're using for your arrow. You can do the exact same thing. So 5-inch squares, right sides together. I'm gonna go ahead and take both of these to the machine and sew one right after the other. We can just pivot. There is my accent square. All right, so once we have all of those sewn on all 4 sides, we can take our ruler and we are going to cut these corner to corner in both directions, just like so. And I'll set these aside. Keep your colors together. Do the same with our other set. There we go. Now let's take these over and press them open, and then we'll square them up. So all of these I'm going to press to the dark side. So I'll hold the darker fabric and roll that back so that my seam is nested underneath that. There are those 4. We can go ahead and press these as well. All right. Once we have them all pressed, we're going to go ahead and square them. I like to use the block lock because what we're going to need to square these to is 2 3/4. So I am just going to set this on here and see if I can slide it down to the 3/4 inch line. It looks like I can. We'll just trim this one side. And I'll slide this down and trim off this little corner there so I have less bulk. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat that with all of these half square triangles. All right, if you don't have a block lock ruler, that's okay. Let me show you how we'll square that with a regular square. So I just have a 6-inch square ruler here, and we are looking for this diagonal line. And then I want it to measure in 2 3/4. So 1, 2 3/4, 1, 2 3/4. Just making sure that that diagonal line is right on my seam line. And then we'll trim off here and here. And then come back and trim off that little corner, just like so. All right, once you have all of your half square triangles squared up, now we can start assembling our blocks. You are going to need 6 of your background half square triangles for each block and 4 of whatever color you chose for your arrow. And so since I use that blue, I'm going to take a 5-inch square of that same color, and I'm going to start with that, and we're going to lay out our block. I find this to be the easiest. It also helps if you make one block and have that as a reference because this one does have a lot of angles that you're working with. So we're going to start by making our arrows just like so. And these are going to work around, and then I know my little lattice blocks are going to go in opposite corners. And then my background half square triangles are going to build around these. Like so. Gotta make sure I turn it right. The thing you can keep in mind once you get this lattice corner right is that the half square triangles then follow the same direction on each side of your block. And so I'm going to go ahead and pull these apart now. And I'm going to sew these two together and these two together. Then we'll add this to the center square, and then we'll sew these in a row and put those together to make our block. And we can press these back. And then make sure that our angles are still going the right way, and we'll sew these to our center square. You give this a good press. Here we go. And now we can sew these rows of 4 and then add them to each side. All right, now we have both of those sewn. You can see how this is going to fit together perfectly. So let's just lay one on each side and sew these down to finish up our block. You do want to kind of watch and make sure your seams are nesting as they're approaching that center square. Right, I love this block. I think it comes together so pretty, and in these blues and greens, it looks like fish swimming in the sea, which is super fun. When you're laying this quilt out, I found it easiest to take 4 blocks at a time. So you'll have 4 arrows coming together, and then you'll put 4 of those across and down. All right, once you get all of your blocks together, then you're gonna add your 2.5-inch inner border and your 6-inch outer border, and that will give you a great size quilt. It ends up 88 by 88. I use this beautiful free swirls pattern for the quilting. It looks like ocean waves, that's why I went with it. And I also chose this fun variegated thread, which just adds a little bit more detail to the quilting. I really loved working with these fabrics. I think they're absolutely beautiful. And if you're not familiar with Karin Nyberg and her story, be sure to stick around because I got to sit down and chat with her and hear about her time and space and how she ended up designing this beautiful fabric collection. So you won't want to miss that. All right, everyone, I am so thrilled to be joined by Dr. Karin Nyberg. Karin, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Misty.
Oh, absolutely. It was a pleasure working with your fabric line. It is just absolutely gorgeous.
Thank
and
you.
So we'll get to that, but let's start and have you tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Wow, yeah, so where do I start? I was an astronaut. It's something I wanted to do my entire life since I was a little girl. And I worked towards that and finally became an astronaut in the year 2000. I studied mechanical engineering, But when I was a little girl, even more importantly, I think I liked creativity, and I liked sewing, and I liked drawing and making things. But anyway, so I then did a 20-year career as an astronaut.
Wow.
Flew to space twice. My first flight was on Space Shuttle Discovery in 2008, and then I flew again on a Russian Soyuz in 2013 and lived on the International Space Station for almost 6 months.
Oh my goodness.
I finally decided that I was, done with the flying and retired from NASA in 2020. And then since then, kind of went full circle to my passions as a little girl of sewing and creating things. And that brought me to where I am today.
Well, and I think that's so neat too, because you got to live basically both of your passions from childhood. You loved creating, you wanted to be an astronaut, you got to do that, and now it's come full circle and you're back to that creativity element, which is so neat.
Yes, I'm so lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you can see behind us, these are some of the quilts made using Karen's Earthviews fabric. So tell everybody obviously where this inspiration came from, how you came to design a line of fabric.
Yeah, so one of my favorite things to do when I was in space is, of course, look out the cupola, which is the window that faces Earth, and take pictures, because Earth is incredible and there's so much beauty. And so I would try to frame the pictures very artistically. And that being one of my favorite things to do, I wanted to also share it with people.
Yeah.
And so, after I retired, I started working with a woman, Marcia, who helped me get in contact with Robert Kaufman Fabrics and get working with them for a fabric line. And the idea of using some of these amazing pictures that I was able to take and share what I did in space with everybody in that way. And so I picked several pictures that I really liked, showing different textures and ecosystems of Earth, and worked with a couple designers at Robert Kaufman, and we turned it into these beautiful fabrics.
Yeah, they're incredible. I have to say, when I saw them online, I thought they were beautiful, but when I got my hands on them, it felt like such a treasure to see all of those different wondrous things, because I think you can peek out and say, oh, that's over the ocean. Oh, that's over the desert. And to see Earth in that beautiful, unique way and to be able to put it into quilts is really, really cool. So.
Yeah, I'm so excited about the line, for sure.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you have another one coming up as well, right?
I do. We're working on a second line in batiks.
Oh, how cool.
Yes,
That'll be amazing.
Yeah.
So be watching for that. You won't want to miss it.
Definitely.
So then what would you say to someone who wants to be an astronaut, or someone who wants to, explore their creative hobbies? What words would you share with them?
I think for being an astronaut, for anything, it's, people often ask me, how did you do it? And how, especially being an astronaut in the STEM fields, I was one of few women and that sort of thing. And it's I think I was so motivated for my goal, and it's setting the goal and just keep pushing for it. And when you will fail, and when you fail, just pick yourself up and keep working for that goal and get outside of your comfort zone. And I'm still doing that now, and imposter syndrome sets in, and it did throughout my entire career. It's do I really belong here? Should I be doing this? And now it's happening in the quilting world. I'm I see some other people's quilts, and I'm do I really belong here? But just pushing through all of that, I think, is really important.
Absolutely. I mean, I've experienced that in the quilting world myself, just because I grew up sewing with my mom and my grandma my whole life. I've been at a sewing machine, but when I started teaching, it's wait, am I actually qualified to do this? And so I can totally relate. And you're right, you just kind of have to allow yourself to be uncomfortable and move through that.
Absolutely.
And then you hit those goals, which is pretty cool to see. And people are generally nice and encouraging and supportive.
They really are.
That's so wonderful. Karen, will you share a little bit more about the patterns you design and the quilts that you've made?
Yeah, so using this Earthviews fabric, I have a few different ones. The one in the cupola views, and this one is really special because the cupola is the window that we would look out from the space station, and it faces down towards Earth. And it really does look like that, basically.
It's stunning.
And that one just really is a good way to kind of show all the fabrics and the textures of Earth. Another pattern that I have is called the Challenge Star, and that one came from a project I did when I was on space station, where NASA helped out. We worked with Quilts Inc. and came up with this challenge, the Astronomical Quilts Block Challenge, where we invited quilters around the world to submit a star block.
Oh, cool.
And then we ended up getting over 2,800 of those, or 2,400. It was a lot anyway. And they were made then by volunteers into 28 quilts. And so and I made one block in space, And so the Challenge Star quilt is designed after the block I made in space. It's not exactly it, but it's
inspired by it.
Inspired by it,
Really cool.
And we made one that is use all the fabrics from the line, which is really
awesome.
nice. And then I have an endangered animals quilt that I picked some endangered animal species and appliqued that, and then Orbital, which is basically circles, applique circles that kind of give it the spacey feel.
I love that. And so we carry these patterns that Karen mentioned here at Missouri Star. We also carry these beautiful fabrics, but I do want to point out that this fabric is perfect whether you are a space lover or not. This is a traditional quilt that I just taught you guys on this tutorial, and it looks beautiful in these Earthfuse fabrics.
I love it.
Thank you. I really love it too. But I am just so thrilled that I had the opportunity to sit down and talk to you and be inspired by your journey. What an amazing life you have led so far. So thank you so much for sharing with all of us. And if people want to follow along and see what you have coming up next, where can they find you?
I have Instagram.
Okay.
At Astro Karen N. And also a Facebook page, Astronaut Karen Nyberg Facebook page.
Awesome.
And Twitter, which I don't use as much now, but I have that as well. And then a website, KarenNyberg.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Karen. I
Thank
really
you so
appreciate
much.
it. Yep. See you later.
Bye-bye.